my friends, and welcome back to the greenhouse on yet another awesome day. Sorry if the shine's a bit much on the top of here, but it is absolutely bright and shiny here. Whoever it was that said the weather in Scotland is poor has obviously never been to Scotland. So here's another couple of quick money saving tips for you. When you want to plant something up, you've got a nice big pot. Quite often you'll see the TV gardener say to you, oh, buy gravel from such and such and get pea size and blah blah blah. Well, you know, the Victorian gardeners didn't put gravel in the bottom of their pots. What they did was, if they broke a pot, they held on to it. So with a little bit of studio ingenuity, what you end up with is lots of little bits of crocks. So you put them in the bottom of your pot. And as long as you cover over the hole in the bottom and put about an inch or so in, that will stop the water pooling at the bottom of your pot, and it'll keep your soil or your compost lovely and fresh. Now that you've got your pot with your crocks in the bottom, I fill it up with old compost. Now I don't use my new stuff. I save that for the new tomatoes and that's going to grow. I use the old stuff that's a bit depleted, but with a little bit of magic and a handful of this stuff, it grows the best plants you can possibly imagine. And this is fish blood and bone, and it stinks to high heaven in a warm greenhouse. And if you mix that in with the top 3 or 4 inches of your compost in here, it'll grow just about anything. Now, will it grow this? This is an Aquilegia that I've pulled out of somewhere else. Now, I don't like transplanting Aquiledias because they don't transplant awfully well. They don't like it, they get a bit upset. But I've had to move it, so it's got to go in. So what I'll do is I've given it a good soak around the roots before it goes in, and then I'm going to plant those roots very deeply. Around it is going to go a lot more of my homemade compost. Remember, this is a mixture of homemade, old compost, stuff from my tomato beds, stuff from anywhere. It's full of all sorts of weed seeds as well, but I'm not worried about them. I'm just going to call them wildflowers. So if anybody asks me what's in the pot with the Aquilegia, I'll tell them, oh, specially selected wildflower seeds. Now here's another tip for you. I'm always losing the rose off my watering can. Now you know what a rose is. It's one of those I was going to show you one, but I've lost it. So if you can't, you don't want to go putting loads of water on your seeds. You want it to be able to spray nicely. But you can't get yourself out to B&Q. Of course, other gardening centres are available. But I bet you've got a few of these lying around your place. Plastic bottle, doesn't really matter on the size. All that matters is that with a spiky, pointy, sticky bit and a bit of care, you can bang a few holes in here. Now if you're one of the lads, you might have one of these, a stabby, pointy, sticky knife. You can do the same, but try just to go through one side of it, not right through. Now the size of this, if you take the end off, is usually about the right size to just put on your watering can. Now as long as you've got the holes in the right direction, and we'll find that out later. In fact, I'll take the sponsorship label off because that watering company just haven't sponsored me. So now when I come to water it, fingers crossed, get the right way around, and look at that. Nice, gentle watering system for anything that needs a bit of water but that doesn't need drenched. There you go. And what you don't use simply goes back in the can. Now, just in case the Aquilegia does kind of pop its cookies, it never hurts to stick another couple of plants in as well. Now, it doesn't matter what you've got, whatever you've got lying around. I buy these things from the garden centre because they're cheap. In fact, I buy anything from the garden centre because it's cheap, because normally they're throwing them away. So in the past I've used everything from primroses to primulas. I plant absolutely anything in with them. And the reason is, it just seems daft letting the plant pot go empty because something's dying in it. it seems far better to me to fill it up with another few bits and pieces. And if the Aquilegia does go, you've got some colour left. Oh, here's my watering can. I'll just quickly water it all again. There you go, that's the problem. Job done. Don't forget to make your plant label up as well, because chances are you might forget what's in there, and it's also quite nice to have a label in so that when people come round and look at your garden, you can remember what you planted. I make these from the slats from an old blind in the house. You know the wooden shutter blinds you get where the bits break off? Well, I take the whole lot and I chop them up, and if you want them to look really nice, you can get a very expensive set of shears like this and just cut it to a point, and there you go. Now if I can only remember where I put my pen, I'll make that label. Now you might ask, if you've got a small garden, how can you grow a lot? Well, you have to become very creative is all I'm saying. Now I've got a little pathway along the side of my house. It's no more, I'm looking at it now, 3 foot wide. At the side of this pathway is this beautiful big wall. Now that wall is covered in stone chips. It gets a lot of sunlight fired at it. It's south facing. So I knocked up, I don't know if you can make it out very well, a few bits of old decking that somebody was giving away on Facebook Marketplace. So what I did was to make this wooden trough. It's like a big long window box really, a foot high, but it's only 6 inches wide. So there's not a lot you might think you could grow in there, but with a few canes and a bit of old net, it's the perfect place for growing climbing beans. Now, I don't know if you can see very well, but what I'm doing is I'm just replenishing some of the compost mix that's along the side of this box, because I had beans in it last year, and I'll leave the roots in on purpose, so as they rot down, the little nitrogen nodules that are around the roots of the peas and the beans that I grew in here will release that nitrogen back into the soil, but it's still a bit short on a few other bits and pieces. So I tend to mix in a bit more fish blood and bone in here as well, and then a load more of the old compost out of the tomato plants, because the tomatoes were really well fed last year. So I know that this compost's got a lot of good nutrient in it. So we'll have a quick look at this. Now the beans I'm going to plant, these are technically known as, forgot what they call them, beans. Now I remembered that they were French climbing, but I can't remember the name of them. But like most good gardeners, it doesn't really matter, as long as I know they're going to grow and I'm going to get some beans back off them. I don't care what you call them, because every year I hold back some of the beans, I let them dry out, I store them in brown paper to stop them getting too much moisture on them, then I plant them again the next year, and you know what, they come back every year, good sized beans, and I never have a problem. Let me show you how I plant them. Now here we go. I literally, I hope you can see this, I don't do any fancy work on this at all. I literally just pop them in about 2 inches apart. Now I know that some folks will say that that's way too close together, but I know of old that I'm going to lose some of these beans, and I'm going to lose them to the little mice that live in the garden. Now I don't mind them having a few, because I'll always plant a few more of these inside the greenhouse, ready to fill the gaps. Now that's the seed that's in. Now the old Victorian gardeners used to have an old saying, one for me, one for thee, and one for anybody else that wants it. So I'll simply throw a few more beans in at random. There we go. And then with the soil from the old tomato plants, I literally bed it under about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. Some places it's a little deeper than that, maybe 2 inches, let's say. That's old money, 2 inches. Until we get that nicely covered in. And once they're all covered in and they're buried, watering can with the rose that I found, give it a good soak. Do you know, I think I prefer my little plastic bottle on the end. But you give them a good soaking in, keep your eye on them for the next week, and within about 10 days you should start to see some shoots coming through. And now you can see the plants are in, the little box is full. I popped a few primulas in there as well. They're common primrose that's in. Again, I buy them at the garden centre anywhere where they're trying to get rid of them, you know. Now, in there I've stuck a few old canes and a bit of wire just to help the plants grow. Now remember, most important thing, put a label on it so you'll never forget what it is. Now, do you remember what we call these ones? They're called whatchamacallit, because I forgot what they called them. Now you see, if I can take a little bit of space like that, a couple of old planks and a bit of chicken wire, and produce healthy beans from it, bet you can as well. Give it a go.